Luke chapter 20, beginning about, probably 36, I think. We discussed last week the Sadducees who had come to Jesus with a particular problem. The Sadducees, of course, did not believe in the resurrection of the dead, did not believe in angels or spirits or people having souls or anything like that. This life was all there was to it. And so you needed to live this life and enjoy as much of it as you possibly could, because this is all there's going to be in this life. But Jesus, of course, they presented to them this problem. And apparently this is something that these Sadducees had discussed with people for generations. They had this question, this problem that nobody could answer concerning the resurrection. This man had married a woman, and he died and left no children, and he had 6 other brothers. And the law of Moses said, when that situation occurs, the next brother will marry the woman and raise up children. Well, all 7 brothers married her. All of them died, no children produced, and eventually the woman died. And so their question was for him, and nobody can answer this, Jesus. These Pharisees hadn't. They'd argued over that for generations. Nobody has the answer to this. And they knew that he wouldn't have it either. In this resurrection thing, Jesus, that you believe in, that you're teaching, whose wife is she going to be now? Whose wife is she going to be? Can you answer that for us? And of course, I'm sure that was their attitude. But we saw from verse 34 and verse 35, Jesus is going to describe 2 different worlds. People of this world and people of that world in verse 35. People of this world, they're going to marry, they're going to be given in marriage. But verse 35, those who are in that world, they have participated in the resurrection of the dead, they're not going to marry, and they're not going to be given in marriage. We discussed last week that there was no dying in heaven. Revelation 21 and verse 4. There's not going to be any death in heaven, Linda. So is there any use for marriage and to have children in heaven? Ain't going to be no weddings or funerals in heaven. Are we going to be concerned about, and being humans, we would, right now we're concerned about, will Linda know Benny when she gets to heaven, and Benny's in heaven? I suspect as humans, that's human nature now. Linda, I suspect when we get there, it ain't going to matter. Will we know Benny? Will you know Benny? Possibly, maybe, and I hope for your sake and our sakes that we do, but I doubt that it's going to matter. We're going to be in such a place that none of those things will matter anymore.
I think I'll know him, but I don't think it will be. We're happy that we're there.
Yes, I think so, and I hope so.
I do too.
That'd be pleasant, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Even better, but it's going to be so good that I doubt we're going to be concerned with any of those things. But notice verse 36, and we'll begin our discussion here. We'll go down through verse 38. Jesus continued to describe the people that are in that world, the world that's coming. Verse 36, he said, neither can they die anymore, for they're equal unto the angels, and they're the children of God, being the children of the resurrection. Now that the dead are raised, even Moses showed at the bush when he calleth the Lord, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. For he's not a God of the dead, but of the living, for all live unto him. So Jesus also tells them in verse 36 that they're not, those people who obtained that world, who are a result of the resurrection of the dead, they're not going to die anymore. There will be no more dying, Revelation 21 and verse 4, no more death, no more need for marriage and producing of children. Notice 1 Corinthians chapter 2. 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 9, and this is something the Apostle Paul points out to the church at Corinth and to us also today. Could I fully describe heaven adequately? That's what I was trying to say. Can anybody here fully describe what heaven is going to be like? I don't have the vocabulary, Linda.
I think we're not. The way Paul described it, it was so beautiful that you couldn't describe it, I guess.
Right. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9, notice what he tells us here. But as it is written, eyes have not seen, nor ears have heard, neither have entered into the heart of any man. Notice it, the things which God has prepared for them that love him. Nobody's ever seen it. Nobody's ever heard about it. Nobody has even the imagination to describe how good it's going to be. My vocabulary, as you all know, is very limited. My imagination is worse than my vocabulary. I don't have much of an imagination. I'm dull and boring, Linda. But I know. I couldn't describe heaven. No one could describe heaven, how great and how wonderful it's going to be. And so that's what I mean when I say, well, we know one another. Well, Pat and I know one another in heaven. Well, possibly, maybe, that would be good. I doubt that's going to be important when we get there. You know, Matthew chapter 25 and verse 21, where Jesus there is describing the judgment scene, the sheep are on the right, the goats are on the left. He tells the sheep on the right to enter into the joy of your Lord. That's going to be a good day. And when we get there and we go into the joy of the Lord and we're singing praises with all the angels around the throne of God, am I concerned about, am I going to get married again? No. Probably won't even cross my mind if I still have my mind like we might do today. In that world, there's going to be no more dying. It's going to be an unimaginable place that none of us could ever imagine, could ever describe. Let's go back to Luke chapter 20. Not only will they not die anymore, for they are equal to the angels. He's sort of indicating here that angels don't die. They can die. Neither can they die anymore, because they are equal unto the angels. Angels apparently don't die. They have an eternal existence. In this world, it is described in verse 34, we marry. We're mortal people. We marry, we die, we produce children, we die. But in that world, we're going to be spiritual. We're going to be immortal. We're going to be the resurrected saints that will be as the angels of God. That's what Matthew 22 and verse 30, Matthew's version of this, he describes those people as being as the angels of God. What's an angel like? I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
you know?
You picture them just like we've seen drawings and pictures of what we think that they look like.
Yeah.
We don't know really.
I doubt it very seriously. That's what they look like. Got all the big wings on the back and the halo and all this type of stuff.
And I think we entertain them too.
Well, I do too. And there are angels, I think, around us, but we won't get into that. I don't know what an angel is. I do not know. I don't know how to describe heaven. You know, there's several things. I could write a book about what I don't know. It'd be a lengthy book about what I don't know either. But we're going to be equal to the angels in that world. Notice he goes on to describe us as being, and we're going to be are the children of God because we are the children of the resurrection. We are the children of God because we are God's resurrected children. We've been raised from the dead. What are we going to look like? We're going to be like the angels. Ain't going to die anymore. Ricky, 1 John chapter 3. Here's a description of what we're going to look like. You know, still don't tell me anything, but I trust in this. 1 John chapter 3 and verse 2. Beloved, now are we the sons of God. That's us. And it doth not yet appear what we shall be, but we know when he shall appear, we're going to be like him because we're going to see him as he is. What's he going to look like? I don't know.
Is Pat okay?
Oh, yes. Yeah, she's in there. I see her moving. She's okay. Well, what are we going to look like? Really, those things are not something that I need to worry about. You know, what's an angel? I don't need to worry about that. What's heaven going to be like? I don't need to worry about those things. All I need to do is get there. Make sure that I get there. We're going to be as the children of God because we are the children of the resurrection. We're going to be the folks who have died in Christ, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 16, who are going to rise first. Notice Romans chapter 8. Romans chapter 8 and verse 23. Romans chapter 8, verse 23. Let's see. go back to, let's see, is that it? Romans chapter 8, verse 23, yeah. Verse 23, and not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit. Even we ourselves groan within ourselves. Notice this, because we're groaning, we're in pain, we're in distress, because we're waiting for the adoption to wit, that is the redemption of our body. We're waiting for the resurrection of our body. That's what we're looking for in this life. We noticed last week, 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 19, if in this life only we have hope in Christ, but we're a bunch of miserable folks. This life is all there is. We're a bunch of fools for even being here. What's the point of us even being here? But notice 2 Corinthians chapter 5. And we're trying to hammer home the idea, and I think we all know this, that there is going to be a resurrection. And that's what we're waiting for, we hope. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 5, and now he that hath wrought us for the self same thing. Now here, let's back up. Go to verse 2. 2 Corinthians 5 verse 2. For in this body, this life we groan, earnestly desiring to be clothed upon with our house which is from heaven. An eternal home in heaven. We're groaning, we're yearning, we're looking for that. Notice verse 5. For he that hath wrought us for the self same thing is God, who has also given unto us the earnest of her Spirit. God is going to provide that home in heaven for us after the resurrection, and we're looking forward to that resurrection. Anyone have any comment?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There in John the 11th chapter, when he raised Lazarus, he said he'll rise again, and one of the Martha one said, well, I know, Lord, he'll rise again but he says, I am the resurrection of the light and the dead there. So he's presented himself as being the one that's going to do the resurrecting. Mm-hmm. If I understand that scripture, but
yeah, and that's right. That would have been a good one. I did not remember that one, but that would have been a good one that I could throw in the pot here. Yeah, that he will rise
he'll rise. He said he'd rise again. Right, but Martha said, yeah, I know he will in the resurrection.
Right.
But he said, I am the light and the resurrection of the dead, I believe it is.
Right. Yes, that'd be a good point. Notice now verse 37. Go back to Luke chapter 20. Jesus had made this argument to these Sadducees here. They're wanting to know, whose wife is she going to be of these seven brothers in this so-called resurrection now. Verse 37, now that the dead are raised. And he's telling that to these Sadducees. Now that the dead are raised, even Moses showed at the bush when he called the Lord the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now that the dead are raised, Sadducees, he's speaking to these Sadducees who deny that there's any resurrection. He's thoroughly answered their question. There ain't going to be no marrying. Don't worry about whose wife she's going to be. Ain't going to be no marrying. Go with me, if you would, to Matthew chapter 22. Matthew 22's version of this, what we're looking at in Luke chapter 20. Matthew chapter 22, verse 29, Matthew includes something here, and Mark includes it also in Mark chapter 12, that Luke did not include for whatever reason. Matthew chapter 22, verse 29. Notice verse 28. Therefore in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be of the seven? For they all had her. Now we're talking about the same thing as Luke chapter 20. Verse 29, Jesus answered and said unto them, you do err, not knowing the scriptures. You folks are making a mistake. You Sadducees are making a mistake about the resurrection because you don't know the scriptures. Now I said last week, the Sadducees had got the idea that there was no resurrection of the dead because they were strict followers of Moses himself. Strict followers of Moses' writing from Genesis to Deuteronomy. And there is no resurrection of the dead spoke of in those five books, for 5 Old Testament books. Specifically spoke of. Linda, you're looking at me now. Is there? Okay. Okay, but now Burdell called me one night last week and told me to look at Hebrews chapter 11. And I did, and we were going there anyway, but Burdell was way ahead of me, and Burdell's right. And you know, I'm not trying to be right and somebody else wrong, or he's wrong and I'm wrong and he's right. But at any rate, we're going to go there. But it implicitly does not say that there's going to be a resurrection. However, you need to read it with some understanding. Jesus is telling these folks, you're erring because you don't know the scriptures. You don't know about the writings of Moses himself, whom they claim to follow explicitly. Have you not read what Moses wrote? Notice what Moses wrote. Go with me to Exodus chapter 3. Exodus chapter 3. Notice what it says here now. Sometimes things are implied that we sort of got to understand. Exodus chapter 3. This is Moses and the burning bush on Mount Horeb, I think it was. Exodus chapter 3. Well, notice verse 5 to begin with. And the Lord said, Moses, draw not nigh hither, put off your shoes from off your feet, for the place whereon you stand is holy ground. Verse 6, moreover the Lord said, I am the God of your father Moses, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Notice verse 15, and God said moreover unto Moses, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Verse 16, he says the same thing. That God is the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And Jesus is asking these folks here in Matthew chapter 22, y'all haven't read that? You're erring because you don't know the scriptures. Have you ever read? Had they overlooked what Moses wrote there in Exodus chapter 3? God is the God of a bunch of dead folks. Is Abraham and Isaac and Jacob during the time of Moses? Abraham and Isaac and Jacob were still living. No. Abraham, when Moses came along, Abraham had been dead for nearly 300 years. But the Lord told Moses 300 years later, after Abraham's death, I'm the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, but they're dead. They're dead. They're not going to exist anymore. They're never going to exist anymore as far as these Sadducees are concerned. What kind of God is that? He's the God of a bunch of dead folks. That's what ran through the Sadducees' mind. If I were a politician, and I'm not, Ed Drinks, he'd say in my right mind, I'll never be. But if I'm a politician and I've run for sheriff for the last 2 times. We had a sheriff's election. I lost both times, of course. That was good. But Linda, all my supporters are those folks who are dead and buried over there in Pine Hill Cemetery. That's my supporters.
I don't think they'll ever be.
Well, that's probably the reason I lost the election, but that's my supporters. Well, that doesn't even make sense, does it? The God is the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, but they're dead. They're dead. Abraham had been dead for 300 years. Have you not read the 5 books of Moses? Jesus is asking these folks. They're strictly following Moses' teaching. Did y'all ever read the part of Exodus chapter 3? You're in error not knowing the scripture. Jesus is telling these folks, God is the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. The Sadducees probably recognized those 3 people, those 3 names, but they also knew that those 3 folks were dead. He's the God of a bunch of dead folks as far as they're concerned, but he's not the God of dead folks, but he's the God of the living, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Now notice, if you would, go with me to Hebrews chapter 11. This is what Burnell referred me to the other night. Burnell is exactly right. And I appreciate him calling and telling me to look at this. Hebrews chapter 11, beginning in verse 8. We're talking about Abraham here now. Abraham dead. God's the God of Abraham. Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 8, by faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he would receive after inheritance, obeyed, and he went out not knowing whither he went. That's Genesis chapter 12. God had told Abraham to get up and leave Haran, leave your daddy's kinfolk, leave everything there. Just get up and go somewhere else. He obeyed, he went, he didn't know where he was going. Yeah. Took a lot of faith. I think in Genesis chapter 12 said he's 75 years old. Anybody want to move when you're 75? I don't know. I don't want to move anyway. But notice what verse 9, by faith again, Abraham sojourned. He lived in the land of promise. He didn't know that was it. He was in a strange country. He dwelt in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs of him with the same promise. Notice why Abraham did that. He did that by faith. He left and did not know where he was going. He lived in this foreign country in tents. He did that, notice verse 10, because he was looking for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Abraham is looking for a city. Is he looking for Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Jericho? What city is he looking for?
Heaven.
He's looking for a heavenly city, huh? You know, the same thing can be said. Notice Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 14. Same thing is said about you and I today. Hebrews 13 and verse 14, 14 and verse 13, 13 and verse 14. For here we have no continuing city, for we're looking for one to come. We're just like Abraham. Are we going to continue forever in the town of Leesville? Here we have no continuing city or town. For we're looking for one that we will continue in forever. We're just like Abraham. Go back now to Hebrews chapter 11. Notice verse, where did it go? Verse 16. Yeah, verse 16. But now they desire a better country. Talking about all these people who had faith in God. They desire, including Abraham, they desire a better country. That is a heavenly country, a heavenly city, wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he had prepared for them that city. Was Abraham aware that there was life after death? Obviously he was. But now, to be fair to the Sadducees, you know, it doesn't say in Genesis, or rather Exodus chapter 6, that God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. He just said that God is the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. If God is the God of a bunch of dead folks, he's not much of a God. Huh? If all my voters are over there in the cemetery, I ain't got much of a chance. Huh? Well, dead folks used to vote around here, on Edgar. Sometimes when we needed them to vote, they voted. But of course, we don't do that anymore. Yes, I don't know. But at any rate, you know, he can't be the God of a bunch of dead folks. You know, Abraham lived in a foreign country, lived in tents by faith. Abraham obeyed God. He looked for, he anticipated, he awaited the special place whose builder and maker was God. That was Abraham's faith in God. He looked for that heavenly city. He waited for it. The life that he lived, his faith in God, spoke of his faith in God. He went out not knowing where he was going. He knew that God would provide. He also knew that God would provide something even more better than this life. He had no error. But notice Hebrews chapter 11, verse 17 now, while we're here. Again, talking about the faith of Abraham. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 17, by faith Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, and he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son. Isaac, of course, was Abraham's only son that he and Sarah, his wife, had. Verse 18, of whom, talk about Isaac, that in Isaac shall thy seed be called. But Abraham knew, he accounted that God was able to raise him up, Isaac, even from the dead, from whence also he had received him in a figure. Abraham knew that he offered his son Isaac, the Lord would replace him. Would he raise? Did Abraham know he would physically raise up Isaac himself from the dead? Well, possibly. Did Abraham have enough faith in God to know if Isaac is dead and gone, God's going to replace him with another son? Either way. Abraham had faith in God, but Abraham also apparently believed in the resurrection because he was looking for that heavenly city. Go ahead. You want to?
Oh, I was
Go
going to say. It goes on to say, I don't know if it's in that chapter, he said if the land they came out of was perfect, he wouldn't be looking for another city.
Yes.
I believe it's in that chapter.
Yes,
I'm
it
not
is.
Sure. So the land they came out of wasn't perfect, but he was looking for that perfect city.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's us today, huh? Even in this good life that we all live today, we live a good life, but it's not perfect. And there's pain and there's suffering and there's death and there's all kinds of things that we have to deal with, every one of us in this life. All that's going to be gone. All that's going to be gone. This life is not perfect. This land is not perfect, but we're looking for a better one. Hopefully that's what we're looking for. And hopefully, of course, we're going to obtain unto this resurrection. You know, Mark chapter 12 and verse 27, Mark says that Jesus told these Sadducees, you do greatly err. You greatly erred not knowing the scriptures. You know, folks, sometimes today I wonder about us, I wonder about me. In my teaching the classes over the years, I've learned some stuff, Linda. Some stuff that I'd been taught all my life by good and honest people, but I'm not sure that it was actually done away now. Stuff that were drilled into our heads. Me and Pat were, we were raised in some strict conservative families, and they meant well, but maybe it wasn't just exactly what they taught. Go ahead.
What's one thing that they taught that you didn't agree with now?
Linda, that's a hard question.
But it's a good question.
Well, it is. They were just very, very strict. Pardon me?
It's the way we applied it is what was not right.
Yeah, they were like we are today. They believed in the letter of the law. It said this, but sometimes they didn't practice it. But this is what it said.
Like what is it that they didn't practice?
Well, showing hospitality.
We don't show it like we should.
Probably not, no. And they didn't either. This is what it says. And just minor things to me, but were they in error? That's the way they were raised. That's the way they were taught. And sometimes I wonder about today all of us can read and write. And that's good. May not have a super education, but we can read and write. My great-grandparents that I never knew probably couldn't read and write. My great-grandparents, my great-great-grandparents. I understand that there wasn't an established church with a building here and we got a located preacher. They just heard the preacher's coming through next Sunday and he's going to be down under the big old cedar tree over here. And everybody going to go down there and hear the preacher. Well, we can't read and write. We're just depending on what he tells us. Or would they be held responsible for being in error? God is a just God. He's a just God.
Yes,
We all apply what we know.
You want that?
We apply as we know.
Yeah.
As
And I think so. As we have knowledge, we need to use that knowledge too. Yeah.
Mom and Dad,
Yeah.
I think they're fine.
No, they meant well. And they taught what they knew. But sometimes, and this includes me, I've discovered over the years that what I used to think was true probably ain't true no more. I've learned a few things here and there that we can be in error, Pat.
It's not the word that we learned that was in error.
Mhm.
That's the way we apply it.
Okay, and that's true too.
Yeah, I didn't hear
It's not.
I didn't hear you right.
It's not that what we were taught was wrong. We just didn't apply it in our lives. We didn't do what we were teaching that we should be
We've all
doing.
done that.
Yeah, and we have. We have. But the Sadducees, I'm not defending the Sadducees here. But, if you read Exodus chapter 6, as we did, it does not include it. Let's go back to Luke chapter 20 now. It does not include verse 38. For he is not a God of the dead, but of the living, for all live unto him. That's not in Exodus chapter 6. All is in Exodus chapter 6 is in verse 37. That he's the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and Jacob. It does not say that he is not a God of the dead, but of the living. The Sadducees read verse 37 and stopped. Well, if you think about it, if our God is the God of the bunch of dead folks, well, what good is he? Just think about that. What good is that? What's of a God? If he's just the God of a bunch of dead folks, well, so yeah, we ought to just live it up in this life, because if this is all there is, just have a good time. Don't worry about it. But of course, God is not the God of a bunch of dead folks. There wouldn't be any point in that. Notice verse 38, he's not a God of the dead, but of the living, for all that live unto him. Everybody that will rise in the resurrection, that find that eternal home in heaven, will continue to live unto the Lord. I've got time for this, maybe. Notice Exodus chapter 32. Exodus chapter 32. There's a Jewish fable. And this is probably Exodus chapter 32. That probably is not true, but it's a Jewish fable that sort of fits with this. And so apparently a lot of the Jews believed in the resurrection of the dead, even during the time of Moses. But notice Exodus chapter 32, verse 8. This is the Lord and Moses. They're in the wilderness for 40 years. They've made this molten calf, this golden calf. Verse 8, Exodus 32 and verse 8, the Lord told Moses, they turned aside quickly out of the way, which I commanded them. They made them a molten calf, and have worshipped it, and have sacrificed thereunto it, and said, this is be thy gods, O Israel, which have brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And the Lord said unto Moses, I've seen this people, and behold, Moses, they're a bunch of stiff-necked people. Now therefore, Moses, let me alone, that my wrath may wax hot against them, that I may consume all of them, and I'll make of you, Moses, a great nation. The Lord was determined to destroy these people. He had had it up to here with them. They made a golden calf. Now in verse 11, Moses besought the Lord, his God, and said, Lord, why doth your wrath wax hot against this people? Moses is going to persuade the Lord, well, let's don't destroy them yet. But the Jewish fable is, well, look, Moses, if you can find 10 folks, can you name Moses 10 folks among all that bunch of stiff-necked people that's made this golden calf? If you can name 10 people that are righteous people, then we'll leave them alone. And this is a fable, of course. This is not in the Exodus chapter, wherever it was. Where am I at here? So Moses names himself. He names Aaron. He names Eleazar, Ithamar, Phinehas, Caleb, and Joshua. We got 7. And the Lord said, Moses, that's only 7. That's only 7. And so Moses asked the Lord, well, what about those that have died? Do they still live? And the Lord said, yes. Notice Exodus chapter 32, verse 13. Moses told the Lord, remember Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, your servants, to whom you swear by your own self, and said to them, I'll multiply your seed as the stars of heaven, and all this land that I've spoken will I give unto your seed, and they will inherit it forever. the other three, Lord, what about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob? Do they still live? The Lord said yes. He said, okay, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, there's the 10. So Moses, and this is a fable now, that indicated, this Jewish fable indicated belief in the resurrection of the dead, because he counted Abraham and Isaac and Jacob as being righteous folks. He had to come up with 10 in order for the Lord to spare the whole group. But all live unto God. He tells us in Luke chapter 20, they're all people are going to be like Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. They're faithful followers of God. They might be dead physically, but yet they're going to live spiritually. Anyone have any comment? Edgar?
Not toward that, but have you, this Romans chapter 8, talking about walking in the Spirit, is in the same context what you're talking about? Have you looked at Romans 8?
Romans 8, and what was it?
It's all talking, the whole chapter pretty much talks about walking in the Spirit. But down in verse 10, I guess or goes along with what you're talking about. If Christ be in you, the body is dead because of sin, but the Spirit is life because of righteousness. But if the Spirit of him that raised up Jesus from the dead dwells in you, he that raised up Christ from the dead shall also raise up you. Or not, it didn't say that, it says, he shall raise from the dead shall also quicken your mortal bodies by the Spirit that dwell in you.
Yeah, do we possess the Spirit of God today? Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if we're going to be raised up to go to heaven.
Yeah, and that's what he's saying there in verse, you read it now, verse 11, he that raised Christ from the dead shall also raise your mortal bodies by the Spirit that dwells in you. Yeah, that's how we will be raised from the dead, because of the Spirit of God that dwells in us. So is there going to be a resurrection? Yeah. If they ain't going to be, let's go home. Hang a for sale sign on the front of the building. We'll divide up the proceeds of the sale of the building, Linda. We don't need this anymore. Okay, next week. Anyone have any comment? Okay, go ahead.
I listened to news the other day, and this man was interviewing a rabbi, I guess you call him, Jewish rabbi, and I thought this was kind of funny in a way to stand. He asked this rabbi something about Jesus, and he said, oh yeah, he said, we believe in Jesus all the way. And I got to think, well, that's not right. He said, we're only waiting for him to come back to set up his kingdom. That's the way he put it. And this interviewer didn't approach him no more on that, because he probably didn't know nothing about the kingdom now.
No.
So he just let it ride at that. He said, oh yeah, people believe that we don't believe in Jesus, but we believe in him a lot, but we're waiting for him to come back to set up his kingdom.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of funny and sad in a way.
Yeah. We're going to get into that next in our discussion in Luke chapter 20. Jesus is going to ask these folks the question next. Who do people say the Messiah, whose son is the Messiah? Whose son is the Savior? And they're going to automatically say, well, it's David, King David.
Yeah.
Because they're expecting this earthly kingdom. And he's going to come again, and he's going to sit on the earthly throne of the nation of Israel. And he's going to be the king of Israel again. And the apostles ask in Acts chapter 1 and verse 6, Lord, is this the time they're going to restore the kingdom to Israel? They were confused about that too. You know, they erred not knowing the scriptures, even the apostles. So maybe the Lord will give us a little leeway too, and I think that He will if we're actually trying. But yeah, we're going to discuss that next week, because the answer to that for them is very easy. He's David's son. He's David's descendant. Because he, the Messiah, is going to sit here on a physical throne over the nation of Israel. And of course, they had the wrong impression there also too. Anyone else have any comment, question?
Yeah, just what should we study?
We'll begin in verse 39 next week. Luke chapter 20, verse 39. 39. All right. I've enjoyed the class. Thank you for your help this morning. Ma'am?
You did great.
Well, thank you. I stumbled around a lot, Linda.
That's just the way you talk.